Hi, welcome everyone. Thanks for being here. I'm Lise McLaughlin of Nature Culture, the publisher of the Black River Death Poems, and I invite you to check out all 22 of Nature Culture's publications at nature-culture.net. And today I'm delighted to welcome 5 poets from this book, which we hope will be of use and comfort to those grieving and those working with death. Each poet will read for up to 9 minutes. Everyone attending can get a discount on the books as a thank you for being here, and I'll put those links in the chat. So I would like to welcome our first reader, Dina Friedman.
Thanks. I am Dina, and I'm just going to read my poems. And I'm going to read the first poem is in the book, and then I'm going to read a couple that aren't in the book, and then I'm going to end with the 2 other poems that are in the book. But they're all, I think, thematically related enough to the topic. So the first one is called What I Might Say to Death, and it's a Hanukkah poem. This is Hanukkah. What I might say to death: please, just one more cup of tea. Will it be cold? Will there be latkes? What should I tell the children when they're making the latkes? Will I be able to see where you're taking me? Some perch on a cloud or a blurry land of souls? Can I be a hungry ghost chatting up the newbies? Who are you exactly? A whirlpool? A fiery tree? Do you smile? Do you wear sunglasses? Will I need sunglasses? Do I have to leave my stuff? Can I be buried with a latke pan, my poems, an onion? Can I listen to music? My music, not harps. How can I kiss the children without upsetting the latke pan? And this next poem, I think, is appropriate for New Year's, although it was written around Halloween. This is a newer poem of mine called Aspirations. I need to pay more attention to the raspberries, how reds deepen to purple, ripe to riper to rot, and how the aurora shines lavender under the black sky, unseen to the naked eye. I need to pay attention to naked, the dark garden dirt crusted in my aging skin, and how skin clings to bones the way I cling to life, the way the cucumber's withered stalk manages to produce one more fruit before frost, small, hook-necked, but still sweet. Close your eyes. You won't know the difference between the taste of this mutant and some random specimen from the supermarket, waxed and Botoxed into cucumber perfection. Isn't that what they do in spas? Cucumber slices over your eyes. Is it something about cucumbers, or something about cool, or something cliche about this myth of perfect skin? Eyes open, I see my veins crawling like the spider webs on all the Halloween houses decked out in pumpkin, the vinyl blow-ups, and the real ones in shiny skin, waiting for the virgin cut, hands pulling from viscera, the seeds slated for roasting before fabricating scary faces. I need to pay more attention to ghosts, not the plastic imitations, the real ones. I need to learn their habits so when I die, I won't have to ask for directions. I'll know when to touch someone gently and when to let things be. I need to pay attention to everything under the canopy of dark, learn to navigate the nebulous sheen of stars, swim through the Milky Way, float on the moon, come back as a ladybug a butterfly, a spider creeping along the ceiling of someone I used to love deeply in this short and wispy life. The next poem is called Seeking the Moon. Nap time, my grandson splays on top of me, heart to heart, dreaming of his day, the moon peeking from behind a wooden blockade. Always he searches for moon in the bright sky and in the haze. And yesterday he pointed at a wisp of cloud, insisting it was the real deal, green cheese, a human face, celestial. I wanted to be scientific, astronomical, explain how skittish clouds shift into shapes that may not really be. But he kept pointing his small finger at the spot barely visible through the maple tree until I squatted into the scope of his view, my head tilted. I saw the crescent moon, smiling sideways as if to say, I told you so. In the lunar cosmos, we imagined a perch surveying the distant earth washed in splotches of green and blue, no countries or leaders or borders. Imagine, John Lennon had it right. The moon, the cosmos, all of us, unheated by gravity, unfractured by lies, living with stubborn belief in starry light. Next poem is called Leaving, and it starts with a quote from a poet, Peter Granbois, which is, we all want to leave this widening night, this barking at the thing we can't see. Again, the light leaves us, sucks itself into itself, and disappears as I pull at the post-frost kale, cold and tough on the tongue, edges brittle as fallen leaves. Each day, raked mountains shrink to hills, then hillocks. The soil, once soft enough to rain through fingers, now needs a spade to break the crust. One day I'll be shrouded here, framed in my disintegrating box, which will take longer than leaves to homogenize, not like the light already slivered in the substrate of cloud. Its assertive moments only a flicker, receding as the night's arms reach into afternoon, reminding us our time to do whatever we must do requires seeing in the dark. And I'm going to close with two short poems that are also in the anthology. The first one of these is called The End If I Could Write It. Someone is bending over me as if I'm about to die, or perhaps already dead. They're aching for the word to close a conversation never opened, while I'm lying in my final fuzz, their face veiled in the blur. I try to wavelength a message, though I barely feel the small squeeze of heat through their damp fingers. It's okay, whoever you are, whatever the problem, I forgive you. And the last poem is called Thank You. Thank you for the sun filtering through the canopy of trees in the last of September's light, for the anticipation of my grandchild's newborn hand, the happiness of kicking feet. Thank you for opening my heart to questions, revealing a path through the weeds to speak my truth. Thank you for the authenticity of worms under my calloused and encrusted feet. Thank you for my old eyes, old thighs, for making this October and November of my life blaze red before the leaves crumble. Thank you for the wisdom of those already crossed and those nearer to the gate, for my grandmother's ghost hand on my shoulder as I play the Moonlight Sonata on a cloudy night, urging me to squeeze harder on the melody. These notes, they're the ones that matter, she always said. Thank you for reminding me I matter, even as the landscape turns to snow and still, for the nudge to remember silver is the most beautiful color, even when tinged with gray, the blue eventually breaks through. And when the sun casts its rapturous light on a tree already ice-coated and dead, when you have to place the cat's warm body in the shallow hole and rain the dirt on top of his fur. Remember those nights with his nose in your neck, the way his whiskers tickled you into a tranquil state of doubtlessness that all was right with the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Dina. That was really great to hear all those together. Our next poet is M. Ann Sweet. Hi, thank you for being here.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. Thank you all for being here as well. And thank you for this, beautiful anthology. So I'll start out with the first two poems, or will be the two poems that were published in the anthology. And it just so happens that they were both written for very close friends who were also amazing and wonderful poets. So poets, friends, and peers on many levels. To Irene, on the anniversary of her death, for Irene Drennan. We drink her funeral beer, blood wine, stingers of bees, her pierced body broken. Dying, she leaves us her wounds, her flesh raw, her savory, her sweet, her apple allegories, sashimi, pastries, the tree-grown orange, vinegar's bitter bite. And this one, sign language for Joe Nelson. Leaf bones laid across my shoe by the wind, her hand, no small mistake. She drops leaves. Dylan Thomas at my feet tells me Lorca is the ghost who follows her. She speaks in bones left on a hill beside the well. I climb her mountain. Holly and maple wail at my feet. She speaks in leaves. Listen, a single leaf falls where no tree stands near. She speaks in a rose gown at night beside my bed, aspen leaves caught in her hair. She speaks at dawn, caped, red over Olympic peaks, her smile beaked, goose feathers fly from loose braids as she dances, raven on sandaled feet. She speaks in signs left beside the road. A heron lands in the ditch. An eagle hunts low on the beach. I follow. For 3 miles, her wingtip fingers my hair. This one was actually written for my parents when they were both still alive, but it sort of relates to the next poem, which I wrote for my mom after she passed. Cello Suite. My mother, a cello, her belly full, her refrain a choral chord. The wind is my father, his bow rubs her strings, his bellows inflate her lullabies. She does not bend where his hand touches her neck, where his legs wrap her curves, his knee in her side. He presses her heart, major and minor, tremorous fingers for the notes he bows. His breath is the wind she yawns. His wide arm in flight is a white crane that picks gnats from her back. And she is the wood resonance for his vibrato. My mom died, thank you. My mom died last year, December 5th, so just a year ago this month. This is titled Cherish the Mother, after Si tu vois ma mère by a song by Sidney Bechet. Si tu vois ma mère translates from French to If you see my mother. Cherish the mother. 1. Cherish the blood she bled into you, the menstrual ache. Fathers do not know the ache, the blood ache. They do not know the umbilical. Mother, I am tied to you across plains, across snow-laden peaks, across the Rio Grande. I am tied to you across days, months, decades of blood cycles. Now I am tied to you in death. I cup my hands, bleed into me what your mother bled into you. She was a grand piano, you a cello. I am a bass fiddle, the music between us, the rhythm of blood. Barren as the belly of the bass, still I feel your flow, still your blood-full umbilical. 2. Christmas 1959. Manual turquoise typewriter with my name written by your hand, left by Santa under the tree. I did not know then what I know now, what I've become, a writer, an artist, a setter of type. This year, no card, no call, no sign of you under the tree. Only 3 1968 stamps found in your wallet, a 6-cent Roosevelt, an 8-cent Einstein, a 10-cent red 50-star runway U.S. airmail. Today, a small box, USPS delivered for $49.50, blood red labels, cremated remains. 3. Si tu vois ma mère. If you see my mother, tell her, it is rainy and cold. I am practicing my bass. Michigan won their championship game. If you see ma mère, ask her, did she feel any pain? Did she feel her son remove her wedding ring from her finger? Did she cry the single tear he wiped from her eye? Was our Father waiting? And thank you. I'll end with this one a little bit more upbeat. This was written to Mary T. or for Mary T. McQuillan, also known as Songless Dancer. She died on the spring equinox, March 21st, 2007. And I didn't actually know her, but I was in my studio around the time of her passing, and this poem just kind of went through me. So this is Mary's song to Mary T. McQuillan. Pneumonia. Her death takes macabre memories and oral historicals. Highborn tribal elder born on March 9th, 1932, to Florence and Walter in Nia Bay, her life, wisdom brought to the table. Her speaking, singing journey, greeting canoes with song, helps those paddling know. Imparts to children off drugs and alcohol. Talking, singing, dancing, helps those paddling know. Rescues one wooden macaw canoe found on Protection Island in 1952. Singing, apologizing to it deteriorating. Landlocked at Hudson Point, the spirit of the tree still in it. Now entrusted, restored, expected to journey, helps those paddling know. Songless dancer, preceded in death, stands on shore, awaiting the canoe, singing, leaving behind children and grandchildren, the spirit of her tree still in them. Thank you.
Thank you. Those were lovely. Our next reader is Janet Aalfs. Welcome.
Thank you so much. And I'm very grateful to be here with you all celebrating this beautiful book. And I'd like to start by calling on our illustrious poetic ancestors throughout time and all around the globe, and to read a poem by one of my favorite poets, Lucille Clifton. This is Blessing the Boats. May the tide that is entering even now, the lip of our understanding, carry you out beyond the face of fear. May you kiss the wind, then turn from it, certain that it will love your back. May you open your eyes to water, water waving forever. And may you, in your innocence, sail through this to that. The next 3 poems I'm going to share are included in this beautiful anthology, and it's wonderful to be here with other poets from this book. The first one is for my mother. It's called, she died in February of 2021 during the pandemic. And the poem is called The Iron Torii, and a torii is a Shinto gateway that marks the transition from the ordinary to the sacred. I teach Taiji classes outdoors, so this is a true story. The Iron Torii. When I place my hand on the iron gate, how happy I am to enter. Here, in the middle of an ordinary day, a young black bear peers at me from behind twin trunks of cedar. Because no one can prove she is not paradise, I say she is. Here, in the moment we meet, wind picks up my arms below swaying branches of Mama Oak. How happy I am to dance this fearless light between clouds weaving snow atop blue mountains where we go. Because losing you aches deeper than any grief I know. When I place my hand on the iron gate, how happy I am to enter. This next poem is for my father. It's called Last Night My Father Returned. Last night my father returned, books spread on the table, thick, rough-edged paper, each cover a different silhouette. This one, he pointed, for you. It's beautiful. Take this one. I could have reached out my hand, but I knew the wild would flee. Like before he died, when I found near his house in a grid of streets, a field not yet erased, where fox kits romped in chicory. Leaping at butterflies, they shone from his eyes when I showed how I stood so still, they did not vanish. And then this third poem from the anthology is called Grief Stones. Grief pulled me down into a silence so deep, I could only hear it, fully submerged in the sea, as I clapped 2 stones whose rhythms pierced my body until my skin became the fur of a hungry seal, and I had swallowed a fish, gaping gills to tail, and even slivers of bone still stuck in my throat. Can't dim rainbow scales. In heaven's darkest place, I sing to savor. I am very happy to say that um, a wonderful poet is here on this call, all the way from South Africa. And this next poem is for a very, very dear person who I was on a performing arts teaching exchange in Cape Town in 2009. And he died suddenly about 3 months after we returned from that exchange and the wonderful artist trip. His name, Julius Ford. And this is called Julius's Shoes. On Table Mountain, a tall man sang Robin Island in the haze beyond. To the lion, my art-blessed brother sang in his bright red shoes. I laughed, watch out, they'll fit me. And just like that, he left footsteps big as craters along the shoreline, striding yet through townships. His rhythms glide, inciting every heart. If you believe in love and you believe in miracles, changing, he changed us. Like dust stones we thought were seals at the edge of breaking waves, pulled with graceful flippers and vanished into the deep. We watched that phantom ship approach, black sails full of stars. Gauging the tide, he knew his constellation had arrived, not to carry him far off, but this way, for all to cross. I'm going to finish with two short poems. These are from my recent book of poems called What the Dead Want Me to Know. This one is called Water Moon Guanyin, and it's about a sculpture that's in the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. Water Moon Guanyin. She who pays heed to the sounds and the cries of the world. Note by note, soft as a choral bell, she broke through glass. Clouds and footsteps echoed. I followed as if in a dream. I awoke further into the dream to a garden alive beyond walls between us we never meant to obey. Though it hurt to walk on marble gravel, hand in hand a familiar arc, I did not falter until she gazed at me, imploring. Wordless, I agreed. We left the singing path. Cherry petals floated into our hair unnoticed. Crimson tulips curled inward as they burned. Lighter than a leaf, sacrum, pelvis, knee. Moondrawn, I turned to find she had already strode clear through me. And I'll finish with this very short poem called We Follow Wings. Shadows in the fabric of birdsong, silence light as bones. We follow wings through the river, asking, why have we feared death? As if it is not also what sings. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that lovely grouping of poems. Our next reader is Victoria Field. Welcome.
Thank you, Lise, and thank you all for being here this evening. It really is a beautiful anthology bringing together poets I know from as far away as Australia, the US, and Ireland. So it feels wonderful to be part of this community. I'm going to read 4 poems, all of which are in the anthology, and they get progressively shorter if you want to pace yourself as you listen. The first poem is called Opening the Gate, and it's dedicated to a friend who lost his life to suicide. He took his own life. And I think suicide is one of those deaths that always leaves us with very many questions. He was also somebody that wasn't a close friend, but he was part of our community. And again, I think that's a very specific kind of loss. The community feels it. But as you'll hear in the poem, we really only spoke at a deep level twice in the years that I knew him. Opening the Gate. In 5 years, we had just 2 true conversations. The first, expansive, outside in sunshine, marriage on both our minds. We were wedding guests on a perfect May day. Everyone joyful, dressed up, bubbling with mild hysteria. You acknowledged a wistfulness too, for those of us not, or not yet, and now never can be, happily spliced. At least that's what I read between your easy banter and serious discussion of churches and religion. Like me, you seemed on the edge, half in, half out, but yearning too, wanting to know more about that one-way gate, the jeweled road, tumbling towards an amazing light and open arms. The second time we talked one-to-one was in winter, a cold, dead day between Christmas and New Year. Kind friends brightened the darkness with a party and games, but you, subdued, were not quite there. Told me it had been a dreadful year. More and more, you said, you'd been in the cathedral, asking the questions it understands so well, but finding no answers. A permanent solution to a temporary problem, someone said afterwards. Not seeing the solutions already a given. The dilemmas not why, but how, what, and when. The why nots of love, work, and friends, irrelevant. They'll all soon be gone in any case. Not a moment of madness. You choreographed a small theatre of action. And then, was it a drop through cool dark to a nothingness of total peace? Or did you spiral skyward past blossom and birds to the embrace of a bride and the blue of her miraculous eyes? Second one I'm going to read is inspired by my father, and he died at the age of 42, and I'm just trying to find it. Here it is. And I live in Kent in the southeast of England, and a lot of my childhood memories are walking in the countryside. My surname is Field, and this poem grew from a line from a poem by George Surtees, the Hungarian emigre poet. My father carries me across a field. So this poem's called Father. My father carries me across a field. How did you enter this field? Foxily, through a hole in the hedge, under cover of darkness and birds' nests. My father carries me across a field. What sort of field? Tussocky, chaotic with cows, desire lines leading through brambles and gorse. My father carries me across a field. Are you too tired to walk? I'm just a child who might go astray. His strong arms hold me close to his heart. My father carries me across a field. Is he a farmer, your father? No, he loves black earth, broad beans, horses and beer, but the land isn't his. My father carries me across a field. And then? He's opened a heavy gate and gone through, disappeared down a deep lane among trees. There's no one carrying me across a field, just a tweed cap flat in my hands, holding thoughts of winter days and a faraway voice calling the way. This next poem is called Tides. I'm in my 60s now, but when I was in my, round about the age of 40, I suddenly had a huge baby hunger, and I think it was probably as well that I didn't conceive a child at that time, because the impulse passed very quickly. But it made me think, when we're talking about death and loss, what it means to mourn something that has never been. And obviously, as women, each time we have a menstrual cycle, there's a small death of the child that wasn't conceived. So it's called Tides. The wind has scribed the sand with unknown names in tongues I'll never hear nor understand. Rivers flow wine dark along my naked legs, between womb and sea, the hinterland. Love fails again. What good a passion spent, to cost so much and still be insufficient? The turning tide will erase the day. No sea defence can keep the years at bay. There was nothing there, and nothing here again today. Just a cradle for the empty air, the space between my arms and hair. And then my final poem, it's on the same theme. It's called Forget-Me-Nots. There's a very fine poetry therapist in the States called Ted Bowman, who's written a lot about loss of dreams. So the idea that we grieve dreams that don't come true, as well as actual people or events. So this again is the unborn child. Forget-me-nots. A constellation of blue eyes that cannot look this way. Insistent names calling out with nothing at all to say. A frilled and speckled counterpane with no small soul asleep. A dancing, posing prettiness, but no lock of hair to keep. A scattering of loveliness that won't take shape nor grow. I'll remember you who never were and can neither come nor go. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
Thank you. Those were great. I would like to welcome our last poet reader, Janet MacFadyen. Thank you so much for being here, Janet.
Oh, thank you for having me. And the first poem I'm going to read is called The Future Melts. And when my mother was dying, I was the last person in the family to see her alive, and I didn't know she was dying at the time. She was in a hospital for Alzheimer's patients, and she was completely non-responsive. And I had talked to her and touched her and talked to her and all of this, and there was no response. And at some point I thought to read this poem, I know this poem. It was one of the few I know by heart. So I read it, I recited it, and all of a sudden I just had a clear sense that she heard me. And the following morning at like 5:30 in the morning, my sister called to say that she had passed. So this is called The future melts. You can hold it in your mouth like chocolate. What comes of this is desire. And if you taste it, what comes is plenty. It is so sweet. Then what comes is the point of stillness inside the body. That is why cats are so liquid. That is why the leaf floats down and down in the warm air, though it is fall, and thoughts slow like a train coming to a halt in the middle of a cornfield at night in October, leaves glinting on the ground. You could get off here with the others, quietly talking and looking up at the stars, whose light had traveled from so far away and so long ago. So that's in this wonderful anthology. And I'll read the second poem that's also in here called, I'm going to only read 3 more poems. This is In Defense of Stones. For instance, take that stone by the guardrail over there. One day it will break down into sand, won't it? And be mixed with leaves and leached by water. Oh, slowly, but for sure. Then won't a root suck it up with its long, flexible straw, powered by the secret green lips of the plant? Won't it suck with all the fierce joy it can muster? And if the plant were a bean, perhaps I eat each pod, feeling the rightness of it. And one day this whole stone will be inside me, and I speak for prior knowledge of a generations of stone lodged in my gallbladder, the knowledge that I too will be ground in the dark gizzard of the world. I chew this notion over and over, how it happens that I could end up food for a rock or the rock itself, rigid and gray and alone. But maybe stones are just another way of living. You could say a different style. And if only we knew how to listen to such enormous or tiny sounds, we could hear their low, age-long conversations at cliff bottoms or along riverbeds, or feel how they embrace life so fiercely they batter themselves to bits. So I wonder, who is the stubborn one here? The boulder in the field, refusing to budge for anything, or me in the road, arguing with myself, refusing to live. So, been a lot of person poems. I'm going to read a dog poem now. I was always told you should never write a dead dog poem because it would be too sentimental. But anyway, I don't know who made that rule up. This is called For a Dog. It seemed the line between thought and thing was blurry in your mind, the essence of meat being more than the morsel itself, which vaporized under a consuming desire. Surely such a will continues to pull in the dark earth, wild with the ecstasy of your own smell, drawing dirt and decay to it like a magnet, the seething microscopic filings gnawing and honing and polishing your long bones. Now, what you most longed for, you have become: the marrow, the blood, the gut. Skin, fur, and feathers, oh, all that beauty you would gladly investigate. You had an engineer's instinct to expose the inner workings, as now you have been exposed, your black pelt laid to one side, a sensuous shining. One night, a small black bear padded into my dream, restless for the door, and I took its collar off and opened up. And so I watched you go, released from your body and chain. You knew what you needed, as the bear knew, asking to be let out into the night, no more collar and leash, a dark force in a dark world, running headlong with the wind wherever it might. And oh, she was a wonderful dog. Beautiful, beautiful. She had the most amazingly glossy fur. She was part Labrador and part Irish setter. Sweet-tempered animal. And finally, the last poem I'm going to read took its inspiration, has a phrase from Joy Harjo's poem, Perhaps the World Ends Here, The World Ends Here, and it's kind of an elegy to both parents. After everything, we sit down and eat. We gather in the kitchen where mothers are stirring the black pot with its red eye. They stir the thick broth, the remembrances, with wooden spoons like oars, all of us huddled together in the boat. No matter what, we will sit with each other and eat. My mother and father stand somewhere behind, their slight tug on the tablecloth unsettling glasses and bowls, time's warp sticking to shirt sleeves like lint. Those who have moved on are tugging, "Do you remember? Do you remember?" at those of us still expecting a feast. The conversation wefts between brother and sister, husband and neighbor, holding this grace of togetherness like a stitchery. No matter what, we are bound to the present by stories, the ones that always begin, "Remember when she ate the caterpillar? Remember the night the oven died?" And where the fabric is rent, we darn and embellish with flourish. My father stitches his sailcloth, my mother her shawl. They are weaving something precious together for us seated here in the flowing, a dark pool of a meandering river. This sacred water we stir and look deeply into like a mirror. We taste and grieve. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Janet. Thank you, everybody, for reading. I love the poems that you chose.